stopped. I want us to start from where we had stopped. Charles, where did you stop in our last class? Where did you stop in our last class, Charles?
We stop at basic economics problems, where we discuss
basic economic problem. Perfect. Basic economic. Let me mute you now. So we stopped at basic economic problems. Basic economic problems. What we call the basic economic problems. We call it the basic economic problem. What we call the basic economic problems. So we basically had three, but now with the changes we had, that's the recap. Basic economic problems. So the basic economic problems are about 5, 6 basic economic problems. So one is what to produce. One was what to produce. We call it what to produce. We call it what to produce. The second is what we call how to produce. We call it how to produce. We call it how to produce. Then we have number 3. We call it for whom. For whom to produce. For whom to produce. For whom to produce. Then we have what we call when to produce. 3 is what we call when to produce. When to produce. 4 is when to produce and how much to produce. 5 is how much. We'll call it how much to produce. How much to produce. How much to produce. And lastly, we talked about 6. We had how to distribute. We call it how to distribute. How to essentially distribute the commodity. How to distribute what we call the commodity. I did discuss what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. Charles, is that true? How to produce, what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. So I think where we were supposed to start is when to produce. When to produce. Whenever we touch about what we call when to produce, we're basically touching on the aspect of what we call time. When you touch on when to produce, we are essentially touching on when to produce. When to produce. Are we together? So this basically involves what we call right time to produce. We call it right time to produce. It essentially involves what we call the right time to produce. That touches on the right time to produce. That touches on the right time to produce. That touches on the right time to produce. Allow me to respond to one thing, 1 minute, just to sort out. So when you touch on that, we're essentially talking about the right time to produce the product. What we call the right time to produce, what we call the product. The right time to produce, what we call the product. The right time essentially to produce the product. Then how much to produce? How much? How much to produce? How much to produce? Remember when I give the definition of economics, I say that economics is a social science that deals with how one allocates his or her scarce resources to satisfy unlimited human wants. Charles, hiyo ni ukweli? Charles, is that true? Economics is a social science that deals with how one allocates his or her scarce resources to satisfy what we call unlimited human wants. But essentially back, I narrowed and say economics is basically talking about 2 things. That is scarcity and choices. Economics talks about 2 things, and that is what we call scarcity and what we call the scarcity and choices. So on economic problems, what we call how much to produce, why is it important? To avoid wastage. To avoid this is essentially there, to avoid what we call wastage. This is to avoid what's called wastage. Together, to avoid what's called wastage. To do what? To avoid what's called wastage. That is essentially there to avoid what's called wastage. If you produce more than enough, then you're going to take it to where? To waste altogether. So then lastly, we have what we call how to distribute our way together, how to distribute, how it will get to the final consumer, how the commodity will get to the final consumer, will get to what we call to the final consumer. How the commodity will get to what we call the final consumer. That is how to distribute the commodity. How the commodity will essentially get to the final consumer. Then we have what we call basic terms and concepts used in economics. Basic terms, and what we call concepts used in economics. Basic terms and concepts that are used in economics. Together, I want us to proceed to the basic terms and what we call concepts that we use in economics. So basic terms and what we call concepts that are used in economics. I want to start with the first term. In the definition of economics, I talked about economics talking about two components, that is scarcity and choices. So I want to start with the first one, that is scarcity. The first term, that is scarcity. The first term is basically scarcity. The first term is what we call scarcity. So what do we mean by scarcity? A simple word, limited in supply. When you say means limited in supply. When you say scarcity, tunamaanisha or we mean limited, we call it in supply. When you talk about scarcity, that is basically essentially limited in supply. Scarcity is what we call limited in supply. Scarcity is limited in supply together. We're saying that economic resources are scarce. Economic resources, when you'll be defining what economic resources are, one of the characteristics we need to understand that economic resources, we say are limited. We call it are limited in what we call in supply. Economic resources are essentially limited in supply. Why do brothers and sisters fight over land? Why do brothers and sisters fight over land? Because they understand the concept that resources are limited in supply. Resources are basically limited in supply. Tumeelewana, limited in supply. Together. Perfect. So the second definition, we talk about allocation. What we call allocation of what we call resources. Allocation of resources. The second concept, we basically talk about allocation of what we call resources. We call it the allocation of resources. That is the second concept. We call it allocation of what we call resources. So when you talk about allocation of resources, Shadi, I hope you're enjoying the class. Gillian, are you enjoying the class? Charles, are you enjoying the class? Shadi, are you enjoying the class? So whenever we talk about what we call allocation of resources, we basically means that is distribution of resources. That is what we call distribution of resources. So we basically call it combination. We call it combination. We call it the combination of economic resources, combination of economic resources, of what we call of economic, we call it resources, combination of what we call economic resources, combination of economic resources. For proper, we call it for what we call proper and what we call efficient. For proper and what we call efficient. For proper and what we call efficient. Production, and we call it for the benefit for what they call for the benefit, call it for the benefit of individuals in society, or what they call individuals, and society. How do we combine? That is allocation. A combination of economic resources, and you say, how do we allocate? Why do we allocate? For the benefit of what we call individual and what we call the society. I want us to define, that is the third concept. The third concept, I hope that line is neat. I hope that line is neat. It doesn't look bad. We call it choice. The third concept, we call it choice. We call it the choice. Third concept, we call it the choice. Choice. Tukisema choice, or when you say choice, what do you mean by the word choice? When you say choice, when we say choice, what does it basically mean? When you say choice, when you decide and say choice, what do we essentially mean when you say choice? When you make a choice, it's simply making a decision. Choice is simply making a decision. And why are we making a decision? In economics, well, let me say that economics basically is the study of, is a social science that deals with allocation of scarce resources to satisfy unlimited human wants. And I was telling Charles, when others were not there, that do you think you can satisfy the needs of Shadrach? Not possible. So if we cannot satisfy the needs of every person, the little resources that we have, we need to allocate it prudently. We need to allocate it prudently. So we need to understand that since economic resources are scarce, we need to understand that since what they call economic resources are scarce or limited in supply, individuals must make a decision, i.e., individuals, we call it must make a decision, Since resources are scarce, individuals must essentially make what we call a decision or a choice from what we call a decision to what we call a choice from what we call a scale. Tonight, a scale of what we call preference. From a scale of what we call preference. Individuals must definitely make what we call a choice from what we call a scale of preference. If you have 10 choices, you should be able to rank. I want X, I want then Y, then I want Z. Are we together? So then, are we together by ranking? But this ranking, you must do it according to what we call two aspects: agency and what we call intent. Agency and what we call intensity. So agency is which one do you need very fast? Intensity is which one do you need frequently? Which one do we need frequently? Together, which one do we need frequently? And which one do we can't survive it? That is urgent. Which one can't we survive it without? Which one is urgent? Together. Which one is urgent? Are we together? We respond with a yes. So then I said something very important, that whenever we have the concept choice, choice to must cannot go without another concept. And that concept, we call it opportunity cost. It cannot go without another concept, and that concept we call it opportunity cost. We call that concept an opportunity cost. The other concept, we call it opportunity cost. What is opportunity cost? We basically call it the cost of the foregone best alternative. For example, I was making a decision, whether to purchase maize or beans. And I say maize is 90 and beans is 100. If I go for maize, if I essentially go for maize, that is a 90. Then therefore, I understand that the opportunity cost, what has been forgone, Shadi? What has been forgone? We say that the cost of forgone best alternative. The cost of forgone best alternative. And I'm saying that if I had maize and beans, and I go for maize, which one is the opportunity cost? Which one have you forgone? Is the beans. The 100 shillings that is for beans, that becomes what's called the opportunity cost. That becomes what's called the opportunity cost. To Bonyeza, yes, if we are together. Give me yes if you're together. That is what's called the opportunity cost. We respond with a yes if we are there. Perfect. Thank you so much. So then we proceed. Thanks, Charles. We proceed and we say that represent the benefit. This basically represents, we call it represents what we call the benefit. The benefit represents what we call the benefit. The benefit that individuals, so what they call farms, that individuals to what they call farms, that individuals to what they call farms, and that individuals to farms misses out, misses out when they basically choose one alternative over another. What an individual basically misses on when they choose what they call one alternative over another. When they choose what they call one alternative over another. So in simple words, if I put N and NB, this is the cost. This is what they call the cost. This is the cost of what they call of the foregone best alternative. Of the foregone best alternative. That this is the cost of the foregone best alternative. So if I choose on the other, that is definitely what we call the cost of the foregone best alternative. Are we together? By choosing one alternative over another, the cost of foregone best alternative, by choosing what we call one alternative, we call it over another. By choosing what we call one alternative over another. Together. So then I go to application, a very common question. Application of the concept of opportunity cost. Application of the concept of opportunity cost. Application, we call it application. Application of what we call of the concept opportunity cost. Application of the concept that we call opportunity cost. Application of what we call of the concept of opportunity cost. Application of what we call the concept of opportunity cost. Where do we apply it? So in an exam, you can be brought for this, maybe 10 marks, You're told 5 areas of application. So the first area is the consumer. Number 1 is what's called a consumer. We call it a consumer. Number 1 is a consumer. How does a consumer basically apply the concept of opportunity cost? How does the consumer essentially, in buying commodity, uses it in buying commodity? Buying commodity. He uses it in buying commodity. He uses that concept in buying commodity. Choosing one buying commodity, e.g., whether to buy commodity, and that is the whether. We understand whether. We call it to buy what we call commodity X, or what we call Y. Whether to buy what's called commodity X or Y. Consumer can use it in making a decision to buy, whether to buy commodity X or Y, whether to buy commodity X or what you call Y, whether to buy commodity X or Y. The second application, we can talk about a farm. A farm can basically apply this in production, which can either in deciding which good to produce, which good to produce, which good to produce. That is production, which good to produce. And you can have it in brackets, good A or B, good A or what's called good B, good A or what's called good B, good B, good A or what's called good B, good B. Choosing good A or what's called good B, good A or what's called good B, good B. Either to buy, either to produce good A or to produce good B, either to produce good A or to produce good B. Then we have what's called government. We have what's called the government. So how does the government basically use the concept of opportunity cost? You had a feature of economics. You're the guys who are going to be at the helm of the government. You are the guys that essentially will be at the helm of the government. So how does the government use basically? Remember, government pertain to projects. Governments are basically pertaining to projects. So the government can use the concept whether to build. It can decide whether to building what you call referral hospital, either to build what you call a referral hospital. A government can make a decision whether to build what you call a referral hospital or a super highway, or what you call a super highway, or what you call a super highway, or what you call a super highway. The government can decide whether to build what's called a referral hospital or what's called a super highway. The government can decide whether to build what you call a referral hospital or what you call a super highway or a super highway. To build a referral hospital or a super highway. To build what you call a referral hospital or a super highway. To build what's called a referral hospital or what's called a super highway. Then we have the next what's called international trade. International trade. Are we together? International trade. So basically, when you get to international trade, that is the last topic. We call it international trade and finance. And basically, the theory that we call the theory, we call it theory of what we call comparative advantage. Are we together? There's a theory that we call the theory of comparative advantage. So when we're saying that a country under what we call the last topic, international trade and finance, and to be precise, we call that theory the theory of what we call the comparative advantage. And essentially, what are we saying on the theory of comparative advantage? We're basically saying that the government should, a country should engage in production of a commodity that has what we call the least opportunity cost. A country should basically engage in what we call production of a commodity that it has what we call the least opportunity cost. That the government should engage in what's called production of what we call a commodity that it has what's called the least opportunity cost. The government should engage in what we call in production of what we call a commodity that it has what's called the least opportunity cost. Together, a government should basically engage in production of a commodity that it has the least opportunity cost. And the theory is called what? The theory of comparative advantage. It is called the theory of comparative advantage. Are we together? Are we together? It's called the theory of comparative advantage. Country should engage. That says a country should engage engage in what we call in production of what we call of a commodity, and you say that it has what we call in the production of commodity, that it has what we call lower opportunity cost, lower opportunity cost compared to the other, compared to the other. That it has what we call a lower opportunity cost compared to the other. That it has the low opportunity cost compared to the other. Then we have what we call money and banking. How do we apply this? Money and banking. We have it as money and banking. The next, we have it as what we call money and banking. We have it as what we call the money and banking. We have it as 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 money and banking. So what is the cost of holding money? For example, what is the cost of holding money? When you talk about money and banking, what is the cost of holding money? Shady has been a bit quiet. What is the cost of holding money? Shady, what are the costs of holding money? What would be essentially the cost of holding money? What will be the cost of holding money? If you hold money, what is the cost of holding money? It is the interest rate. Are we together? If you're given money by the bank, because you're holding that money, you're going to pay what? You're going to pay interest rate. Are we together? So the cost of holding money is definitely what we call the interest. Charles, it's what we call the interest. Interest is the opportunity cost of holding money. You need to understand that interest is what we call is the opportunity. We call it is the opportunity cost of what we call of holding what we call money. Is the opportunity cost of holding money. That interest rate is definitely what we call the opportunity cost of holding money. If you go to hold money, then you'll be charged with interest. You'll be charged interest rate altogether. Because money earns interest. Since money, we say earns interest. Since money definitely earns interest when deposited in a financial statement, earns interest when what we call deposited in what we call in a financial institution. It definitely earns interest when deposited in what we call in a financial institution. Then we have what we call the factor market. The last one is what we call the factor market. Tunaita factor, we call it the factor market. The last one, we call it the factor market. The last one, we call it the factor market. The last one, we call it the factor market. We call it the factor market. The last one, we call it the factor market. So whenever we talk about the factor market, we talk about what we call transfer earnings. But when under the theory of production, which is another topic, under the theory of production, we're going to understand what we mean by transfer earning. So we say transfer earning, we say is regarded as what we call as the opportunity cost, is regarded as the opportunity cost, of keeping, we call it of keeping what you call a factor of keeping what you call a factor of production, of keeping what you call a factor of production, keeping what you call a factor of production in its present use, in its present use, present use, holding a factor of production in its present use, keeping a factor of production in its present use, and prevent it, and you say, and prevent it from shifting, and you say, prevent it, we call it from shifting to what you call to another occupation, and prevent it from shifting to another occupation. So definitely transfer earning is regarded as what we call the opportunity of cost of keeping a factor of production in its present use and preventing it from shifting to another occupation. I'm going to teach what we call transfer earnings. What we call transfer earning. Whenever we talk about transfer earnings, these are basically, what people earn without working altogether. These are earnings without working. So if you want to keep a factor of production, the opportunity cost of keeping a factor of production in its present use is what we call transfer earning. And that will basically prevent it from shifting to another occupation together. It will prevent it from shifting to another occupation together. We respond with a yes. So then we proceed to what we call importance of opportunity cost. This was application. So we proceed to what we call importance of opportunity cost. We proceed to what we call importance of opportunity cost. We call it importance of what we call of opportunity cost. Importance of what we call the 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 opportunity cost. Someone has to put them down here. We start with the first one. Importance of what we call the opportunity cost. One of the first important, number one, in determining prices of factors of production, we say in determining, just a minute again, I respond to somebody. So back to what we're doing, So look up, guys, So back, importance of opportunity cost. What is the value of opportunity cost? So number one is making a choice. It helps to make a choice based on alternative. So we have making a choice based on alternative. Making what we call a choice, let's say based on what we call based on alternatives. So making a choice based on what we call alternative. Making a choice based on what we call making a choice based on what we call alternatives. So it assists you to make a choice and you're saying based on alternative. So making a choice based on what we call alternative. So it also helps to determine the price of goods and services. Determine, the second is to determine. We call it determine. What we call determines what we call the price of what we call of goods and what we call and services. Determine what we call the prices of goods and services. Opportunity cost will assist you to get the price of goods and services. We also understand to make a choice on what to consume. We were saying that in choosing A or B commodity, making a choice on what to consume, make a choice on what to consume. Making a choice on what to consume, system making a choice, call it making what called a choice on what to consume. We say making a choice on what to consume, on what basically to consume. Making what you call a choice on what to consume, making what's called a choice on what to consume. Let's say determine expenditure decision on individual or a firm. Expenditure decision, we call it expenditure. Expenditure decision on what's called on individuals or firms, on individuals or firms, making expenditure decision on individuals or firms, on individuals or firms, as to evaluate the commodity spend on, as to evaluate, we call it evaluate what we call the commodity, as to evaluate what we call the commodity, we call it to spend on, as to evaluate what we call the commodity, to spend on. Are we together? But we can also talk about determining the prices. We have the last one, we call it determining what we call the prices, determining what we call the prices of factors of production, of what we call of factors of what we call production, determining the prices of factors of production by analyzing, we call it by analyzing, alternative means of producing it, alternative prices of producing it, or prices of producing, call it of producing it, by analyzing what's called the alternative prices of producing it, by basically analyzing what they call the alternative prices of producing it, by analyzing alternative prices of producing it, by analyzing what called alternative prices of basically producing it. Together, we are done with the opportunity cost. I want to move to another concept. Iko nyumbani, is everything at all? Yes, so we are done with that. So I want us to proceed to another concept, that is wants. Wants. We call it wants. On definition of economics, we say that what is a want? Human, to satisfy unlimited human wants. What is wants? What is called the wants? Wants, we call it human desire. We call it human wants. Iyo aikai vizuri, tuandike vizuri. We call it wants. Wants. And on the wants, we call it human desire. We call it, refers to human desire to have a commodity. Tunaita human desire. Human desire to have what we call a commodity. Human desire to have what we call a commodity. We basically call it human desire to have what we call a commodity. That is what we call want. If you're told what is a want, that is definitely what we call human desire to have what we call a commodity altogether. So then we talk about characteristics of human wants. Characteristics of what we call of human wants. So characteristics of what we call of human wants. Characteristics of what we call of human wants. Characteristics of what we call of human wants. What we call the characteristics of human wants. So characteristics of what we call of human wants. So when we were in class with Charles, I said that one of the things about human desire you cannot satisfy. Can you satisfy what I need? Shadrach, can you satisfy what Gillian desires? You cannot. You cannot altogether. So number one quality, we need to understand that human wants are unlimited. You give them today this, but tomorrow they want this, the next day they want that. So number one, we know that they are unlimited. They are unlimited. They are numerous and never ending. Unlimited. Tukisema unlimited, tunamaanisha numerous and never ending. The numerous, you say and never, we call it a never ending. So we say the numerous and never ending. As the first one, we call it the numerous and never ending. The numerous and never ending. Ones are alternative. We understand that ones are alternative. Ones are definitely alternative. Ones are what we call alternative. So ones are definitely what we call alternative. Ones are definitely what we call alternative. They're competitive in nature. That is to imply that they are competitive. We call it competitive. They're basically competitive in what we call in nature. They have alternative, meaning they're basically competitive in nature. They are competitive in nature. They are competitive in nature. But you also say that once what we have, they're complementary. Some must be satisfied together. Some must be satisfied together. Complementary. We'll talk about the next complementary. Complementary. Some must definitely be satisfied together. Complementary. And we understand that some must be definitely satisfied together. Some must definitely be satisfied together. So that is what we mean by complementary. Some must definitely be satisfied together. Must be satisfied together. For example, this was motor vehicle. We have motor vehicle and what's called and fuel. We have what's called the motor vehicle and fuel. Those just go hand in hand. That is what we mean by complementary. That is what we mean by complementary. That is what we mean by complementary. That is what we mean by what we call complement. Some must be satisfied together. Some must be satisfied together. And that is what we mean by complementary. Together. You give me a yes. You encourage Malimo by giving a yes. Some must be satisfied together. And that is, some are complementary. They must work in hand. Then we can also talk about they vary in urgency and intensity. Some you need them now, vary in urgency and intensity. We have it what called vary in what called in urgency, and what called and intensity. Vary in what called in urgency and intensity. Vary in urgency and what called intensity. Vary in urgency and what we call intensity of chicken. Then they keep on recurring. They keep on recurring. They keep on recurring. You know, you don't satisfy them. They keep on basically recurring. They keep on recurring. They keep on recurring. They vary with time, place, and person. Vary. We understand that vary. We call it with time. We call it time with place, time, and person. You know, that some people, and person. So it's gonna and person. They vary with place, time, and what we call person. Time, place, and what we call and person. Are we together? Time, place, and person. But you need to understand that once, when you keep on satisfying something, it becomes an habit. So that is to say, once change into habits. Once, we call it changes into habit. Once changes into what we call habits. Once will change into habits. Once will definitely change into what we call habits. Once will definitely change into what we call habits. Once will change into habits. So certain ones can be fully satisfied. Certain ones, we need to understand that certain ones can be, we say fully We call them fully satisfied. Certain ones can be fully satisfied. For example, desire to build a permanent home. If you build a permanent home, desire to build. Once you desire to build a permanent home, to build a permanent home, to build what's called a permanent home. Once you build a permanent home, would you need that home again? Once you build that permanent home, would you want that home again? Would you want that home again? You don't want it. Then again, they're universal, you know? The same way a black man feels the need to eat is the same way a white man. So we just say they are universal. They are, they are what I call universal. They are 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 universal. Then we have what called types of human ones. We say to what's called types of human ones. Types of what we call of human ones. Types of what we call of human ones. What they call the types of human ones. Types of what they call human ones. So they're basically categorized into two. They're basically categorized into two. So we have what's called the basic ones. We have what's called the basic ones. And then we have what's called the secondary ones. Secondary ones. So we have the basic ones, and then we have what's called the secondary one. So we have the basic ones, and then we have what we call the secondary ones altogether. We have the basic ones, and then we have what we call the secondary ones altogether. So we start with the basic ones. When you talk about the basic ones, what do you call the basic ones? So what are basic ones? What is this that we call basic ones? Who can try? What is this that we call the basic ones? What is this that we call the basic ones? We call it the basic ones. What is this that we call the basic ones? They are essential for human survival. We cannot survive without them. They are essential. We call them essential. We call them essential, say for human survival. So the definite essential for what we call human survival. They are what we call essential for what we call human survival. What are these that are basically essential for human survival? What are these that are essential for human survival? What are these basic ones that are essential that you cannot do without? So we call them food, shelter, and clothing. So we have them as food, shelter, and what we call in the clothing. Food, shelter, and what we call the clothing. Food, shelter, and what we call the clothing. So characteristics of these basic ones. Characteristics of basic ones. You can be asked characteristics of what we call the basic ones. Basic ones. So basic ones are also called what we call the primary. We also call them the primary ones. We also call them the primary ones. So characteristics of the basic ones, or what we call the primary ones. Tuko pamoja. One cannot do without them. You need them. One cannot do without them. One cannot, we say, do without them. So one can definitely not do without them. You need them. One cannot do without them. That is the first quality. Then say they keep on recurring. They keep on recurring. They keep on recurring. They keep on keep on recurring. They keep on recurring. The second is that they definitely keep on recurring. They keep on recurring. They cannot be postponed. One cannot do, they cannot be postponed. You cannot postpone eating. They cannot be postponed. They cannot be, we call it postponed. They cannot be postponed. They cannot be postponed. You cannot postpone this. They cannot definitely be postponed. They cannot be postponed. They're satisfied before the secondary. You satisfy them before the secondary. They are satisfied. We say they are satisfied. Satisfied, we call it before what we call before the secondary. Before you buy a car, make sure your stomach is full of. Your stomach, you can cover your basic needs. Is that true? Before you think about buying a luxury, making a pool in your home, make sure that you have enough food. Is that true? What do you say of a person who decides to buy luxury and forgets what he eats, what he's supposed to eat? How do you think about such a person? He decides to buy luxury. He decides to buy luxury. He decides to buy what we call luxury, but forgets about what he should. But forget about what he should, and forget what he should, and forgets what he should be actually, and forgets about what he should actually, and forgets about what he should actually, and forget about what he should actually be, what he should actually be eating. Somebody buys a car, but actually forgets, he doesn't have food. How would you describe such a person? How would you describe such a person? So we're basically saying that when it comes to these basic needs, the needs to be satisfied, they should be satisfied before what we call the secondary ones. The needs to be satisfied before the secondary ones. Before the secondary ones. Before the secondary ones. Before secondary ones. They are satisfied before the secondary ones. Before what we call the secondary ones. Together. They are definitely satisfied before the secondary ones. Are we together? Together. They are satisfied before what we call the secondary ones. They are definitely satisfied, we'll say, before the secondary ones. They are satisfied before secondary ones. Then we proceed to now what they call the secondary ones. Are we together? We proceed now to the secondary ones. Secondary ones. Secondary ones. So what do you mean by the secondary ones? We say secondary ones. When you say secondary ones, when you say secondary ones, somebody to try. When you say secondary ones, 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 when we say secondary ones, when we say secondary ones, one can do without them. One can survive. One can do without them. One can definitely do without them. So one can definitely do without them. Examples of the secondary ones. What are the examples of the secondary ones? Examples of what we call secondary ones. So we say that one can do without them. What are the examples of secondary ones? Examples of the secondary ones. Look at balanced diet, medical care, those, and we're getting to a future where a car will be a basic need. Are you saying, is that true? That as we see time is flying, we are definitely going to get to a point where we'll find that a car becomes a basic need. So when we say one can do without them. For example, i.e. a sleek car, studying abroad, etc. These are secondary ones. So they're satisfied after satisfying what we call the primary one. We satisfy them after satisfying what we call the primary one, after satisfying what we call the primary ones. So I want us to move to the next definition. We call it goods. We define what we mean by good. So what is a good? We define what we mean. The next is a good. A good. A good. A good. A good. A good. So this was also, they simply provide, this will just provide what we call prestige, provide what we call prestige, and what we call comfort. But you can do without them. They simply provide what we call prestige and what we call comfort. They simply provide what we call prestige and what we call comfort. They simply provide what we call prestige and what we call comfort. They simply provide what we call prestige and what we call comfort. Are we together? Provide what we call prestige and comfort. But you can basically do without them. They simply provide what we call prestige and what we call comfort. So then we move to the next, that is the good. So what is a good? A good, this is a good. Your phone is a good. So your phone is a good. Your phone is a good. We call it a tangible. We call it a tangible. We call it a good is what we call tangible commodity. We call it tangible commodity. It's a tangible commodity. And say which satisfies, tangible commodity which satisfies. We call it tangible commodity which satisfying. We call it the tangible commodity which definitely satisfying, tangible commodity which satisfy human wants and has an exchange for value, which satisfy human wants, and we say an are and has what we call an exchange of what we call of value. And has what we call an exchange of value. So it's a tangible commodity which satisfies human wants, and has what we call an exchange for value. And has what we call an exchange for value. And has what we call an exchange for value. So characteristics, we call it characteristics of what we call of human wants. Characteristics of what we call human wants. Characteristics of what we call human wants. Characteristics of a good, sorry. Characteristics of a good, sorry. Characteristics of a good. Characteristics of what we call of a good. Of a good. Characteristics of what we call of a good. Characteristics of a good. Characteristics of a good. Characteristics of what we call a good. One of the characteristics of a good is that it's tangible. We can touch it. It is tangible. We say that it is what we call tangible. It is tangible. We can touch it. It is tangible. We can touch it, feel it. That's a good. The next is that a good is, we say that a good is, they're visible. You can see it. They are visible. They're visible. Tumeanza kazi. We have started our work. And as they are visible, they say they can be stored. They can be stored. They can be stored. They can be stored. The next is that they can be stored. They can definitely be stored. They can be stored. They can be stored. They can be stored. They can change in quality over time. They can change. They can change. We say change in quality. They can definitely change in quality over time. They can definitely change in quality over time. They can definitely change in quality over time. Quality over time. They can change in quality over time. Then we can also talk about the quality can be standardized. You can make the quality standard. The quality can be standardized. We say the quality, say that the quality can be standardized. The quality can be standardized. So the quality of this commodity can essentially be standardized. The quality can be standardized. The quality can be standardized. And the quality can definitely be standardized. The quality can be standardized. And we can talk about what we call ownership can be transferred. Today I own a good, tomorrow is transferred. The quality can be, the ownership can be transferred. Ownership with the sun can be transferred. Ownership can definitely be transferred. So ownership of goods can definitely be transferred. 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 So types of goods and services, what we call types of goods and services. Types of goods and services. Types of goods and services. What we call the types of goods and services. We proceed to types of what we call of goods and what we call and services. Types of goods and services. Types of goods and services. Types of goods and services. What we call the types of goods and services. So we have the first type of goods. Tonight are inferior goods. Inferior goods. Types of a good is, number one is what's called an inferior good. Type of a good, we call it inferior good. Tuko sawa hapo, inferior goods. So these are goods that are demanded by low-income earners. The one is that the goods that are demanded by low-income earners. These are goods that are demanded. We call them these. We say are goods. Goods that are demanded. That are demanded by what's called by low income earners. So these are goods that are essentially demanded by what we call by low income earners. These are goods that are demanded by low income earners. If there are goods that are demanded by low income earners, if look up, you say that you're demanding a good because by low income earners, you have money. What happens when you make money? Will you demand them? I've said these are goods that are demanded by low income earners. What happens when you make good money? 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 You no longer demand them. So as the income of consumer increases, an increase in consumers' income leads to decrease in demand. We know that an increase, we call it an increase in what's called in consumers' income, when standard leads leads to what we call to a decrease, leads to what we call to a decrease in what we call in demand. So we understand that an increase in consumer income leads to what we call a decrease in demand, leads to what we call a decrease in demand. So when the income of the consumer increases, the demand of this particular product definitely decrease. The demand for this particular product definitely decreases. So that is the positive substitution effect. The positive, we call it substitution effects. We call it outweighs what we call the income effect. Don't worry about substitution and income effect. That is the theory of consumer behavior. I discussed that at length. The positive substitution effect outweigh what we call the income effect, outweigh what we call the income effect together, team. So then I move to what we call given goods. Given goods. So given goods, another one that is given goods are goods that are a little bit very interesting, a little bit very, very interesting. So when you talk about these given goods, they are they go against the law of demand. Are we there, team? Are we enjoying what you're doing? Are we there? And are we enjoying what you're doing? So whenever we talk about given goods, they behave in a funny way. One of the first ways they behave, the demand increases with increase in income. That the more the money increases, the more the price increases, the more that they are demanded. The demand increases with increase in price. So these goods were basically named after a scholar known as Robert Giffen. A scholar known as Robert Giffen. They were essentially, pardon, on which word? On which word? I'm saying, let me pardon. I say that when you talk about Giffen, good Shadrach, I can see you also participating. The last I've said, a given goods behave a little bit funny. The demand increases with the increase in price. They always go against the law of demand. The demand increases with increase in price. We say that the demand increases with increase in price. The demand increases with what we call with the increase in price. The demand essentially increases with increase, we call it with increase in price. That the demand increases with increase in what we call price altogether. So professor, they were basically named after a professor known as Professor Robert Giffen. Robert Giffen. So this is the professor who named this code. So the professor who basically named this code, it was known as Robert Giffen. They were named after a professor known as what called Robert Giffen. So together, they were named together. So we need to understand that given goods are inferior goods. Given goods are inferior goods. Given goods are inferior goods. Are we together? Given goods are inferior goods, but inferior goods are not given goods. Charles, nimekusaidia. Charles, have I helped you? Charles, nimekusaidia. Charles, have I helped you? Charles, have I assisted you? I must confirm whether I've assisted my student. Charles, have I assisted you? Charles, umesaidika? Perfect. So I'm saying a very good statement here. Given goods are inferior goods, but inferior goods are not given goods. So given goods are inferior goods, but inferior goods are not given goods. They increase demand, the definition demand increases as what we call as the price. We call it at the price. increases. The demand increases as the price increases. So the demand of this particular product, we say increases as what we call as the price increases. The demand increases as the price increases. So the quantity demanded will always increase as the price increases. So the quantity demanded will increase as the price increases. But Malemo says something very, very interesting. Malemo says something very interesting. And Malemo says that given goods are inferior goods, but inferior goods are not given goods. The given goods are inferior goods, but inferior goods are not given goods. So example of a given goods is a staple food. Staple food is an example of a given goods. We call it staple food is an example of a given goods. What is a staple food for Kenya? What is a staple food for Kenya? What is a staple food for Uganda? What is a staple food for Tanzania? What do you think is our staple food? That we eat in every meal, you'll find it. What is a staple food for Kenya? What is a staple food for Kenya? Ugali. Perfect, it's true. So I want to explain the logic and the understanding. The key thing, the notes are there. So you're not writing anything. I just want you to give me your ears and attention. The best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. For those who depend on God, and for those who trust in God, is the author and the finisher of our life. It is God. We cannot do anything. We can be so talented, but end up having nothing. Because whoever gives is God, is God. Whoever blesses, whoever elevates is God. Whoever elevates is God. It's not men. Men cannot elevate you, God can elevate you. So back to this. I've talked about staple food. And I've said staple food is ugali. For Kenyans is ugali. It means that every meal we have ugali. Let's say, for example, we were taking ugali, beef, and sukuma wiki. Tuko pamoja. We respond with a yes. We were taking ugali, beef, and sukuma wiki. Beef and sukuma wiki. Give me a yes, kindly, if you're there. We were taking ugali, beef, and sukuma wiki. We were taking ugali, beef, and sukuma wiki. Respond with a yes. Ugali, beef, and sukuma wiki. Give me a yes if you're there. If you're taking ugali, beef, and sukuma wiki, and let's say, for example, the price of unga doubles. Let's say unga is currently 200. The price of unga gets to 400. And remember, it's our staple food. Are we going to stop taking ugali? Remember, it's our staple food. We need to have it in our menu on every moment that we take something, because this is a staple food, we need to have it. Do you think we're going to stop taking ugali? Do you think we're going to stop taking ugali? What are we going to do? We're not going to stop taking ugali. In fact, the more the price increases, what are we going to do? The more we want to consume it. So essentially, as the partakers of ugali, what we are going to do is that simply we are going to reduce probably on meat. If we are taking 1 kg, we are going to take a half. Are we together? We are going to take a half a kg. A Shadrach, we are going to take a half a kg. Instead of taking 1 kg, but you're not going to stop. That's why we say that for given good, an example is staple food. The more the price increases, the more we demand them. Together. I want to make a very nice statement here. In given goods, and remember this statement, given goods are inferior. Given goods are inferior goods. We call the given goods are inferior goods. Given goods are inferior goods. Given goods are inferior goods. Goods, but not inferior goods are given good. But not, we say all inferior goods, we say are given goods, are given goods. So given goods are inferior goods, but not all inferior goods are given goods. So we say that given goods are inferior goods, but not all inferior goods are given goods, but not all inferior goods are given goods. Together, that statement, remember it. Together, that statement, remember it. Remember that statement. Is there anybody who needs a break? Is there anybody who needs a small break, or you don't need a break? Is there anybody who needs a break? Is there anybody who needs a break? Ama tuhitaji time ya kupumua kidogo. Do we need a break, Shadi? Do we need a break, Gillian? Is there anybody who needs a break? Ama mambo iko sawa? We just proceed. Is there anybody who needs a break? We respond. I am your friend. Mwalimu is your friend. Shadrach, have you met me somewhere? You've met me in the first class. Sindio? I'm your friend. So when you need a break, you tell me. Yes, you're fine. Is there anybody who needs a break? Shadi is fine. Is there anybody who needs a break? Charles, do you need a small break? Or you don't need it today? Gillian, do you need a break? So, yes, that is nice. So allow me to do the 10 minutes and I leave you with 40. We'll do the next 10 minutes and we leave you with 40. I go to the next type of a good. We call it free good. We call it free good. Can do the next free good. Free good. So to say about free good, what do we mean by free good? Free good. What do you call a free good? A free good, we basically say these are goods that are given free by nature. Given free, tonight are given free by what do you call by nature. Given free by nature. So these goods are essentially given free by nature. They're given free by nature. So implying hence the priceless, hence they are priceless. Hence, we say they are what we call priceless. Because they're given free for nature, they are therefore priceless. Examples of a free good. Example of a free good. Example of a free good. Examples of a free good. Air, water, sunshine. Air, water, and sunshine. Air, example. We have air, water, and what we call sunshine. Air, water, and sunshine. Air, water, and sunshine. Air, water, and sunshine. Air, water. Apparently, some things that God has given us for free. If God was to charge us even the air that we breathe today, if God was to charge us even a single cent, who are we? Who are we if God was to charge us? Then we have the next type of a good. We call it the substitute. We call it substitute. Substitute goods. Substitute goods. We call it substitute good. So what is a substitute good? Substitute good. Substitute goods. Substitute good. substitute good. Substitute good. So consumption by one leaves out the other. These are goods in which consumption of one, these are goods. These are goods in which consumption of one leaves out another. Consumption of one leaves out the other. Goods in which consumption of one leaves out another. So when you're consuming one, we will not consume the other. Consumption of one leaves out the other. They cannot be consumed together. In other words, these goods cannot be consumed together. These goods, we say cannot be consumed together. So these goods cannot essentially be consumed together. For example, which goods can we not consume together? Which goods can we not consume together? Which goods can we not consume together? Which goods are those? Coffee and tea. Can you take coffee and tea together? I.e., coffee and tea. We can also talk about Prestige and Blueband. We can talk about Prestige and Blueband. Can you consume them together? No. Consumption of one leaves out the other. So then we talk about complementary. Move to the next type of good. We can have this as our last. We'll call it the complementary goods. So when you say complementary goods, these are basically consumed together. Complementary goods, these are basically consumed together. These are goods that must be consumed together. So these are goods. These are goods that must be consumed together, that must be consumed together. These are goods that must be consumed together. These are goods that must be consumed, we'll say together. These are goods that must be consumed together. These are goods that must be consumed together. Consumption of one does not leave out the consumption of the other. Consumption of one must not leave out what we call the consumption, must not leave the consumption of another. Must not leave out the consumption of another. The consumption of one must not leave out the consumption of another. Together, the consumption of one does not leave out the consumption of another. The consumption by one does not leave. They must always be consumed together. Which goods are those? Which goods are those? Which goods are those? Which goods are those? Car and fuel. Number one is car and fuel. Then you have the second category, ink and pen. You can't ink and pen, call it ink and pen. These ones you must consume together, ink and pen. These ones you must consume together. Ink and pen, those ones you must consume together. Together, team. Yes, come if we are together, we respond with yes. So I did not choose a representative. Who's going to be our representative for this class? The three of you, who is going to be our representative? Nani Atatu, who will represent, who will tell Mwalimu this one you've not given, so we can liaise. We know what I'm supposed. Like right now, I need to give you some notes on macro. Who is our representative? Is it Gillian? Is it Charles? Is it Shady? Who do you choose as your representative? Who do you choose as your representative for this class? Who do you choose as your representative? Gillian. So Gillian, you are our representative. Together, Gillian, you are our representative, Gillian. Is that okay, Gillian? So there's some notes that I need to make sure perfect. I can see you saying yes. So we'll be liaising if there's need, but I want you to be very attentive in economics. Economics is a little bit wide. Tafadhali, Shedi, economics is a bit wide. Economics is a bit wide. So I want you to be attentive. I want you people to be attentive in economics. I want you to get the best, and I want you to be very attentive in economics. Nitashukuru sana when you're attentive. This subject in that foundation level is a bit technical. This subject, you can think of much of the calculation, but this subject is technical in a way that most people don't pass it. So please be attentive to it. Together, I'm happy to see Shadrach, I'm happy to see Charles, and I'm happy to see Gillian. I want to say that God bless you and God keep you safe till we meet in our class next week. Asanteni sana. Asanteni sana. Thank you so much. Thank you, Gillian. I hope the class was enjoyable and we capture something. Yes, God bless you too. God bless you too. We can leave now.